It was a dark and stormy night, and Lily was alone in her old, creaky house. She had moved in a few months ago, and she couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. At first she thought it was just a bit old and she would get used to the sounds and shadows it made, but she would swear the shadows were darker than normal, and the sounds were trying to tell her something. As she walked through the dimly lit hallway, she heard a strange noise. It sounded like someone was whispering her name. Lily brushed it off as her imagination and continued on to the kitchen to make herself some tea. Tea would calm her down, but as she stood at the stove, the kettle shrieking as if it couldn't stand the heat, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched, like she shouldn't move a muscle. She finally turned around, but nothing was there, just the rest of her old house. She reached for the kettle and suddenly the lights flickered and went out. Lily's heart began to race as she fumbled for her phone, but it was dead. She was completely alone in the dark. The panic set in when she heard a rustling sound coming from the living room. She crept towards the door and slowly pushed it open. What she saw made her blood run cold. There, in the middle of the room, was a strange figure. It was tall and thin, with long, bony fingers and a face that was twisted into a grin. Its eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, and Lily could feel its gaze burning into her. As she stood frozen in terror, the figure began to move towards her. Lily tried to run, but her legs wouldn't move. She was trapped, completely at the mercy of the creature that was slowly advancing on her. Just as it was about to reach her, Lily's eyes snapped open. She was in her own bed, safe and sound. It had all been a nightmare. The images would stick in her mind, but that's all they were now. Just a bad dream that would fade with time. But as she sat up, she noticed something strange. It was colder than usual, and the darkness was complete. Her gaze was pulled to her open bedroom window, and there was a cold breeze blowing in. And on the windowsill, she could see a set of long, bony fingers reaching towards her from the darkness outside. Lily's heart raced as she stared at the fingers on the windowsill. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. Was it really just a nightmare? Or was there something more sinister at play? As she watched in terror, the fingers slowly began to curl and flex, as if beckoning her towards the window. Lily tried to scream, but her throat felt constricted and no sound escaped her lips. She tried to force herself to wake up. It must be a dream again. The figure from her nightmare flashed into her mind, and she knew that she had to get out of there. With shaking hands, she grabbed her phone and ran towards the front door. The handle was cold to the touch, and no matter how much she pushed, the door would not open. Panic set in as she realized that she was trapped. She was alone in her house with whatever was outside her window, and there was no escape. Suddenly, there was a loud banging from the back entrance. Lily froze, unsure what to do. Was it something trying to help her? Or was it something even more dangerous? As the banging grew louder and more frantic, Lily realized that she had to make a decision. She could stay and face whatever was outside her window, or she could risk opening the door and facing the unknown. With a deep breath, she slowly moved towards the darkness of the back patio, unlocked the door and pulled it open. What she saw on the other side made her wish she had never left the room. There, standing in front of her, was the same figure from her nightmare. It was even more terrifying up close, with its twisted grin and glowing eyes. And behind it, Lily could see more figures lurking in the shadows. As they advanced on her, Lily knew that she was in serious trouble. She tried to run, but it was no use. They were too fast, too strong. And soon, she was surrounded, trapped in a nightmare from which she could never escape. The last thing she saw before everything went black was the same set of long, bony fingers reaching towards her from every direction.